half Japanese, half Chinese. I was considered mixed and impure enough to be raised in Japan. My parents live in Japan and they left me with my grandparents in Malaysia. I just felt so abandoned and rejected. My father ended up getting a divorce from my mother. He remarried another Japanese woman, but nobody ever told me that when my father came back with his wife, that she's not my mother. I felt the immediate rejection, that they didn't want me in their lives, and that they would rather have, 2 dogs than have me with them. Because I have always discarded my Japanese identity in favor of my Malaysian Chinese identity. I felt like the country has betrayed me, and I used that pain to really put it into my work. I heard the project was in trouble in Japan, and I volunteered to go to Japan to fix this problem because I know that I could do it. That one day I stepped into Tokyo, and I just felt that this is where I need to be to really discover and explore the Japanese half of me. In less than 3 years, I created a business from $40 million to over $200 million in a country dominated by men. Never heard of a half Japanese, half Chinese woman being a business leader in a big US telecom world. So I couldn't be the leader I am today without going through the emotions and the pain that I went through my whole life.
If we look deeper, we will see that we all have a divine recipe. All of us have shame about things that have happened to us. We've all gone through difficult times. We address these issues so we can quiet our minds, heal our bodies, and get closer to our heart's desires. Hector had to let go of his macho persona to make peace with the one that he loved the most, which was his father.
My father was your traditional Mexican man in the sense of working hard, wanting to get ahead, wanting to provide for his family. And as a young boy, I was looking for his love. I wanted his attention. The challenge was trying to figure out what was wrong with me, because obviously something's wrong with me. If, number one, he's not giving me the attention I want as a little boy, not giving me the love, yelling at me, being verbally abusive, obviously I did something wrong, there's something wrong with me. So I carried that story from that point on for a long time. And I realized he probably wasn't going to do it the way I wanted. He probably wasn't going to tell me what I wanted when I was a little boy. Mi hijo te quiero, te adoro, I love you, son. I did some personal growth work. I went inside, looked at the shame, the guilt, the pain. I went through that, I healed that. And I was able to have that forgiveness with my dad and let that go. I wasn't going to tell him I love you for him. I was going to tell him I love you for me. My dad passed on. And I'm really grateful that I listened to that inner voice that said, go ahead and tell your dad that you love him. Do it for yourself.
Dr. Edie Eger is one of the most beautiful divine women on the planet today. And she survived the worst circumstances, something that most of us can't even ever imagine.
May 22nd, 1944, when I arrived in Auschwitz, there was chaos. My father was separated from us and my sister and I. facing Dr. Mengele. I didn't know who he was until later. And he pointed to my mom to go to the left and my sister and I to the right. I asked the inmate, when will I see my mother? And she pointed at the chimney and fire was coming out of the chimney. And she said, you better talk about your mother in past tense, she's burning there. My sister and I hugged each other and said, the spirit never dies, the spirit never dies. I remember that so vividly, even today. In Auschwitz, we didn't know when we took a shower whether water is going to come out or gas. And then there were others who ran into the barbed wires, they got electrocuted. And that night, Dr. Mengele came to the barracks and wanted to be entertained. And my friends who knew that I was a very talented gymnast, and so they volunteered me and I ended up dancing for Dr. Mengele. I closed my eyes and the music was Tchaikovsky and I was dancing in Budapest, the Romeo and Juliet. I completely dissociated and we had choices. I chose to look at the guards that they were more in prison than I was. I remember they took my blood about twice a week and I asked, why are you taking my blood? And the man said, I'm taking your blood to aid the German soldiers so we can win the war. I said to myself, I was a pacifist, I was a ballerina, I bet with my blood you're never gonna win the war. So I created a part in me that I was able to still be in charge of and not allowing anything what happened externally to murder my spirit. I remember I said, if I survive today, then tomorrow I'll be free.
I remember when Marita came to the shadow process and everybody was looking for the negative qualities they needed to embrace. Marita couldn't even say hers, and I kept asking, what is so horrible that you can't even say it? And she said, because of my background, mine is that I'm a Nazi.
I was born in Germany in 1955, 10 years after the war. I found out when I was 11 or 12 what my country had done. This is a subject we never talked about. My grandfather wouldn't tell me about his experience. My mother wants nothing to do with this. I'm not the only German that holds this and lives this and hides this. And I found many ways to sabotage myself from ever tasting power or success because, you know, Hitler was successful to coming to power and the power was horribly abused. I didn't interact with any Germans at all. I stayed away from them, and I did not want to interact with any Jewish person because I didn't want to cause any more pain, and I was ashamed.
Samya was willing to shine light on the darkness and willing to take back her own projections for the good of all humanity.
In 2006, when Israel bombed Lebanon, at the time I was trying to evacuate members of my family and try to bring them over to the US, and there were no news. You needed to figure out how to reach to them. I became so angry again because here is my family and the bombing. One day I was watching TV. I saw girls crying, little girls. I saw they were Lebanese girls. And of course, you know, every time I saw like Lebanese kids being bombed and everything, I was really, really angry. I was like, you know, yes, 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 let's bomb the bastards kind of thing. And at the end, I realized they were reporting from the Israeli border, on the other side of the border. And they looked exactly the same as the Lebanese girl that were killed on the other side of the border. And I saw the pain. And that day I made a commitment to myself that I will no longer tolerate that kind of cruelty, irrespective of which side of the border it's happening.
Now, I'm not saying that if you and I rise up to become the people that we are capable of being,